I remember sitting in the back of the classroom, the kind of spot no one fights for, the place reserved for the quiet ones, the forgotten ones. My desk was always a little colder than the rest. My name rarely called unless it was to mock, never to praise. While others raised their hands with ease and laughter filled their corners of the room, I learned to shrink in silence. Not because I had nothing to say, but because every time I tried, I was met with smirks, rolled eyes, or worse, laughter that pierced deeper than any insult. They laughed. Not always loud. Sometimes it was the kind of laughter that hides behind tight smiles and sideways glances, whispers that floated through the air like venom. Not smart enough, not fast enough, not good enough. Over and over, those words wrote themselves into my mind like scripture, like a curse. I was a walking question mark in a world full of exclamation points, misunderstood, misjudged. They saw what I lacked, never what I carried. They measured my worth by how well I fit in, not by what made me stand apart. But the thing is, pain doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just sits with you, quiet, heavy, like a shadow stitched to your spine. I carried that weight every day, smiling when I had to, pretending I didn't hear what they said. But I did. I heard everything. Every joke made behind my back. Every name whispered when the teacher wasn't looking. And each one planted a seed. Not of anger, but of awakening. You see, they didn't see my silence as strength. They saw it as weakness. They thought because I didn't fight back, I wasn't strong. That because I didn't speak up, I didn't feel. But silence is not the absence of strength. It's the reservoir of it. And while they poured their energy into popularity, into games of ego and approval, I was learning something far more powerful. I was learning how to endure. Those years weren't just hard. They were shaping. The laughter didn't break me. It built me. Quietly. Brutally. Brick by brick. Because when you grow up being laughed at, you either believe the lies or you build the fire. And I chose the fire. I chose to let their mockery become my motivation. I chose to bury their voices beneath something louder. My own belief. Still, I won't lie to you. The scars are real. They don't vanish with time. They mature. They don't fade. They remind of how cruel people can be, of how easily the world turns its back on the different, the quiet, the misunderstood. But I also remember something else, that the boy in the back of the class, the one they laughed at, the one they thought was weak, he never stopped watching, never stopped learning, never stopped becoming. And maybe that's what they never realized, that in trying to break me, they only taught me how to rise. There's a strange kind of awakening that comes when you're pushed to the edges, when the doors don't open, when the seats at the table are never offered, when the invites never come. At first it stings, feeling like you're standing outside while the world laughs and dances behind closed windows. But then something begins to shift. You stop pressing your face to the glass. You stop begging to be let in. And that's when the world starts to look different. They had their clicks. I had my thoughts. While they chased validation, I chased understanding. While they laughed together, I sat with my silence and started listening. To myself. To the aching questions in my chest. To the hunger that couldn't be fed by fitting in. I didn't know it back then, but the loneliness I felt wasn't a punishment. It was a gift. It stripped away the noise. It peeled off the layers of false acceptance. And in that emptiness, I found clarity. Silence became more than just a coping mechanism. It became my sanctuary. It was where I could breathe without judgment, think without interruption, and feel without shame. They filled their time with gossip and games. I filled mine with questions and dreams. They were learning how to blend in. I was learning how to build out. And every day spent outside their world, I was slowly constructing my own. The truth is, rejection can feel like the end. But it's not. It's a redirection, a push towards something greater than the crowd. When they closed the door, they thought they were keeping me out. What they didn't realize is they were setting me free. Free from conformity, free from needing their permission, free from their limited vision of who I was supposed to be. I started seeing patterns in people, in systems, in myself. While they were busy being accepted, I was busy becoming aware. And awareness, that changes everything. It turns pain into perspective. It turns confusion into curiosity. And slowly, without even knowing it, you begin to evolve. Not for attention, not for revenge, but because truth has a way of rising when silence is given space to breathe. There's a power in being the outsider. It hurts, yes, but it also grants you vision. You start to notice what others miss. You feel more deeply. You think more broadly. And eventually you realize you were never meant to fit into their mold. You were meant to break it, to shatter the idea that worth comes from being chosen by people who never even tried to understand you. They moved as a unit. I moved as a force waiting to be unleashed. And while they were busy playing the roles they were given, I was preparing to write my own. That's the truth no one tells you about being left out. Sometimes it's the first step to being lifted up, not by them, but by something much deeper, much greater. By the self you never would have found if they had simply accepted you. Rejection isn't loss. It's a mirror. It shows you who really sees you and who never did. And when no one sees you, you learn how to see yourself. You learn how to trust the quiet. And in that quiet, something awakens. Something far more powerful than belonging. Purpose. There's a certain kind of liberation that comes with being overlooked. A dark, quiet freedom. When they don't choose you, when they don't even see you, you're left with nothing but yourself. And at first that feels like a curse. Like the world decided you weren't good enough to belong. But over time, you begin to understand something deeper. When no one expects anything from you, you can become anything. No one handed me a map. No one paved the way. No spotlight followed me around. I wasn't the golden child, the teacher's favorite, the one everyone cheered for. I was the silence in the room, the afterthought, the shadow they never looked twice at. But while they were busy shining under the lights they were given, I was building something in the dark. I was learning how to see without being seen. And that changed everything. Because silence, when embraced, sharpens your senses. You stop waiting for applause and start measuring your worth by effort, not approval. You begin to listen to your thoughts, to your instincts, to the quiet voice inside that no one else hears. And in that stillness, strategy is born. Focus is sharpened. You realize that being left out of their plans gave you the freedom to create your own. They didn't choose you, so you chose yourself. Let that sink in. They didn't choose you, so you chose yourself. Over and over, like a mantra, because that choice, that single quiet decision, is what separates survivors from legends. When the world looked away, you looked inward. When the crowd moved on, you stayed behind and started to build. And no one saw it. That was the beauty of it. No eyes, no pressure. Just you. And the fire starting to rise. You see, when you're not expected to win, every move you make is unexpected. Every victory is a surprise. Every step forward is untracked, unpredicted, unstoppable. That's the gift of being ignored. You get to grow in secret. You get to fail without judgment, learn without shame, rise without limit, because no one put a ceiling on your potential. They never cared enough to build one. And while they were performing, you were preparing. While they were networking, you were studying. While they were busy being chosen, you were busy becoming. They didn't choose you, so you chose yourself. That choice lit the match. It said, I don't need your approval to be powerful. It said, I don't need to be picked to prove that I'm worthy. And from that moment on, you stopped chasing their world and started creating your own. There is a hidden strength in being unseen. No one watches your steps, so you can dance however you want. No one charts your path, so you can carve a road no one thought possible. That's how you go from invisible to inevitable, from ignored to undeniable. So let them overlook you. Let them laugh. Let them think you don't matter. Because while they underestimate, you elevate. While they talk, you transform. While they sleep, you strategize. And one day when you stand in a place they never imagined you could reach, you won't need their applause. You won't even need their recognition, because you'll know the truth. They didn't choose you, so you chose yourself. And that was always the most dangerous choice you could have made. The nights were long. Not the kind of long that makes you tired, but the kind that breaks you open, that stretches your soul thin and asks, "Are you sure you want this?" Over and over again. While the world went silent and the lights in their windows went dark, mine stayed on, quietly, relentlessly. There was no one watching, no one clapping, no one saying, "Keep going." Just the grind, just the voice in my head whispering, "Don't stop." Not yet. While they were sleeping, you were studying. While they were laughing, you were building. There was no finish line in sight, no promise that the pain would pay off, only the work, the pages, the practice, the repetition, the same failures again and again until they didn't sting anymore, until they started to shape you, not into someone the world wanted, but into someone the world couldn't ignore when the time came. That's what discipline really is. Doing it alone. Doing it without the crowd. Doing it when every cell in your body begs for rest. Because it's not about being seen, it's about becoming undeniable, even if no one sees it yet. Especially then. You learned in the dark. You trained in silence. There were nights your hands trembled from exhaustion, mornings when your eyes burned from the strain. But you didn't quit. You didn't walk away just because no one noticed. You stayed. You fought. You kept sharpening the blade. Because deep down, you understood something they didn't. Growth isn't glamorous. Mastery isn't loud. Real transformation happens in the shadows, not under spotlights. It happens when no one is watching, when quitting would be easy, when comfort calls you like a lullaby, and you still say, "Not yet." They thought you were quiet because you had nothing to say, but really you were too busy becoming someone worth listening to. They thought you were wasting time, but you were learning patience, building endurance, crafting something deeper than talent, resilience. While they chased shortcuts, you embraced the long road. While they sought applause, you demanded results. While they relaxed, you resisted. They didn't see the hours, the struggle, the doubt, the inner battles you fought alone. But that's fine, because it was never for them. It was for the future you, the one who would walk into a room one day, not asking for respect, but radiating it. The one who would no longer need to explain how hard they worked, because the results would speak louder than words ever could. This was silent training, the kind that builds more than skills. It builds character, focus, grit. The kind of foundation no storm can shake. You didn't just prepare for success, you became the kind of person who could handle it, carry it, multiply it. They slept, you studied, they joked, you planned, they drifted, you trained. And now look at you. Not a product of praise, but of pressure. Not born from privilege, but from persistence. They were dreaming. You were becoming. And now, you are everything they never saw coming. Pain has a way of stripping you down to your core. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't wait for you to be ready. It arrives like a storm, loud, sudden, and unapologetic. But here's the truth most people never tell you. Pain is a master sculptor. It carves away what's weak. It burns off what's unnecessary. It hurts, but it refines. And you were forged in it. You learned to smile through heartbreak. You learned to speak through silence. You learned to keep walking even when the ground beneath you felt like it was cracking open. There were nights when it felt like your chest would cave in from the weight of disappointment. Days when trust felt like a game rigged against you. People you loved turned cold. People you needed turned their backs. And still, you stood. Shaken, but not broken. Battered, but not bowed. Steel is only strong because it has survived fire. Diamonds shine because they were crushed under unthinkable pressure. And you became precise, focused, sharpened, because every scar taught you how to aim better. Every betrayal taught you how to see clearer. Every lie they told you, every promise they broke, it cut deep. But it also carved a path through the noise. You didn't crumble, you adapted. That's what pain does. It forces you to evolve. It stops you from pretending and starts you on the path to truth. Real truth, not the kind that looks pretty in quotes. The kind that's earned in silence when no one is watching, when it feels like no one cares. That's where the transformation begins, not in comfort, but in chaos. You started to think differently, feel differently. Your moves became intentional, your words measured, your reactions controlled. The same pain that tried to drown you ended up teaching you how to breathe underwater. You didn't just survive the fire, you started using it, feeding it, letting it burn away everything that was no longer serving you. That heartbreak, it taught you resilience. That failure, it taught you humility. That silence, it taught you self-reliance. And that betrayal, the one that shattered something inside you, it became your blueprint, not for revenge, but for resurrection. You didn't just bounce back. You rebuilt, stronger, smarter, clearer. You started to see through the mask, hear what wasn't being said, feel the shift before it even happened. They thought they broke you, but really they just introduced you to your own depth. You became precise with your time, with your energy, with your trust. You stopped bleeding for people who wouldn't even hand you a bandage. You stopped hoping they'd understand and started making peace with being misunderstood. That was the turning point. That was when the pain lost its grip. Not because it stopped hurting, but because you stopped letting it define you. The worst days, they taught you the most valuable lessons about people, about patience, about power. You didn't just get through it, you grew through it. Now every scar is a signal, every ache is a map, every wound is a warning. You've already survived worse, and there is nothing more dangerous than someone who knows they can suffer and still keep going. You were forged, not favored, tested, not pampered, sharpened, not softened. And now, you don't flinch, you don't break, because pain didn't destroy you, it made you precise. There comes a day, not marked on any calendar, not celebrated by anyone else, when something inside you snaps. Not in a way that breaks you, but in a way that wakes you, a quiet revolt, a rebellion against everything you've allowed for too long. It doesn't begin with a scream, it starts in stillness, a stare into the mirror, a long, honest look at the reflection staring back. And then, something shifts. You whisper it at first, maybe through gritted teeth, maybe with tears still fresh in your eyes. Enough. Enough of the waiting, enough of the wishing, enough of the shrinking just to make others comfortable. Enough of apologizing for your dreams, your strength, your scars. That's the moment the victim dies and the warrior is born. No more hiding, no more begging, no more doubting. Say it again. No more hiding, no more begging, no more doubting. Every time they pushed you down, you told yourself it was just life. Every time they laughed, every time they lied, you took it, silently, hoping that maybe one day they'd see the real you. That one day someone would reach out and say, "You matter." But that day never came, not from them. So you created it yourself. You stopped waiting for a savior and decided to save yourself. You stopped trying to be understood by people who were never meant to understand you. You dropped the mask, dropped the guilt, dropped the chains. And in that moment, when you looked at yourself and said, "No more," you didn't just change your mind. You changed your entire direction. You see, every warrior begins as a wounded soul. Every storm you weathered built armor. Every night you cried in silence, forged steel beneath your skin. And when you finally stood up, not for anyone else, but for you, the world didn't notice, but it didn't need to. Because legends are born in the shadows. You didn't need applause, you needed clarity. And when it hit you that this is your life, your voice, your path, it was like lightning in your veins. No one saw it coming, not even you. But once it hit, there was no turning back. From that day forward, you moved differently. You stopped explaining yourself. You stopped justifying your existence. You stopped trying to fit into spaces that were never built to hold someone like you. You became dangerous, not because you hurt anyone, but because you finally believed in your own worth. You finally realized your story isn't over. Hell, it's just beginning. The world may have underestimated you. They may have misjudged your silence, mocked your kindness, mistaken your patience for weakness. But all of that ends now. No more hiding, no more begging, no more doubting. You don't owe the past another minute. You don't owe your pain another explanation. What you owe is everything to the person who kept going, you. The one who got back up without applause. The one who chose power over pity. The one who finally looked in the mirror and didn't see a victim anymore, but a fighter, a force, a fire waiting to burn. That day, a legend was born, and no one saw it coming. No crowd cheered. No spotlight followed you. Just you, grinding, quietly, while the world scrolled past, distracted and oblivious. The early wins didn't come with trophies or praise. They came in the form of late nights and early mornings. In paychecks that barely covered rent but proved something greater, you were moving forward. You took the jobs no one respected. Did the work no one noticed? You delivered food, cleaned tables, worked double shifts, started side hustles that didn't make sense to anyone else. But every task, no matter how small, became a brick in your foundation. You were building something bigger than they could see. And you didn't post it. You lived it. You weren't in it for likes. You were in it for your life. This wasn't a curated story, it was survival. While others chased attention, you chased progress. While they performed, you prepared. While they laughed at your hustle, you stayed silent, focused, unshaken. You weren't interested in looking successful, you were becoming it. That meant missing parties, turning down vacations, eating alone, working weekends, saying no to comfort so you could say yes to growth. They didn't understand it then. They thought you were obsessed. They thought you were isolating yourself. But what they couldn't see was that you were climbing. And the climb, oh, it was lonely. There's no company on the staircase to greatness. No one to hold your hand when it hurts. No one to catch you when you fall. Just your will, your vision, your quiet belief that somehow all this would matter someday. That each sacrifice was sacred. That every small victory, every time you chose discipline over distraction, was part of a bigger picture. They didn't clap when you paid off the first debt. They didn't care when you hit your first goal. They didn't see the nights you bled for a future they couldn't even imagine. But you kept going, because this was never about proving them wrong. It was about proving yourself right. You kept your head down, not in shame, but in purpose. You didn't need to explain what you were building. You let your consistency speak. You let your work compound in silence, quietly, powerfully, because real success doesn't scream, it echoes. You didn't beg for recognition. You became undeniable. They'll look back one day, try to figure out when it all changed, how you got so far ahead. They'll say it happened overnight, but you'll know the truth, that the path was paved with invisible wins, that the climb was made of 1,000 private battles they'll never know about. This wasn't for show. This was for you. You sacrificed comfort for clarity, ease for excellence. You made the hard choices when no one was watching, so you could live with freedom when everyone finally noticed. And now, standing higher, you look back not in bitterness, but in reverence, because every step up that mountain was yours, earned, fought for, silent but sacred. You didn't post it, you lived it. Success wasn't a performance, it was survival. The world that once ignored you is suddenly watching. The same faces that used to dismiss you, overlook you, mock you, they're now looking your way. Former bullies, the ones who once took pleasure in your pain, are now sending friend requests. Teachers who once doubted your potential are now quoting your success in staff meetings. The same mouths that once laughed at you are now asking for meetings. It's almost surreal, isn't it? The same people who once couldn't be bothered to notice your struggles are now clinging to your every word, seeking your approval. The tables have turned, and the weight of their gaze feels heavy, but not in the way it used to. Not in the way that once made you shrink. Now it's different. Now you stand taller. But here's the key. You didn't rise for revenge. You rose for purpose. They may not understand it. They might still see you as the person they once thought you were. But you've already left that version of yourself behind. You've already transcended the version they mocked. You didn't fight to see them suffer. You fought to see yourself evolve. You fought for your own growth, your own potential. You didn't rise to make them regret. You rose to fulfill your own destiny. And now they're stuck in the illusion. the same illusion they used to drag you down with, thinking success is about revenge, about proving others wrong. But you know better now. You understand that real success doesn't come from others' acknowledgement. It comes from the clarity of purpose, the power of inner transformation. They're still playing in the shallow waters of ego, but you became the storm. They're still lost in the illusion of validation. They still seek approval. They still bend their knees to the opinions of others. They think that getting the last word makes them powerful. But all you did was move forward with no noise, no fuss, just relentless pursuit of what you knew was your calling. And now, while they look at you with awe, you look at them with understanding. They are still caught in the game of comparison. You're playing a different game now. Their messages and meetings, they don't define you anymore. They don't control your worth. Your success isn't measured by how many of them come knocking at your door. Your success is the peace that fills your soul when you realize you become someone who doesn't need approval, who doesn't need recognition, who doesn't need the validation of those who once made you feel small. So let them knock. Let them ask for meetings. Let them try to fit into the world you've built. But understand this, none of their actions can touch the person you've become. They're still searching for something outside of themselves, still looking for answers in the places they've always known. You, on the other hand, became the answer. The world that once ignored you, it now bows at your feet, but it still doesn't know you. Because the person they see now is not the person you were. You've evolved, you've grown, you've transcended the noise, and you didn't rise for them. You rose for you, for your truth, for your strength, for your legacy. They're still lost in the illusion, but you became the storm. Success isn't about luxury. It's not about flashy cars or private jets. No, real success is something deeper. It's power, it's control, it's the ability to shape your own future and to dictate your own terms. You didn't chase wealth, you chased the power to create, to lead, to make a mark in a world that once underestimated you. And now you've built it. You built something solid, something real, a company that stands as a testament to your resilience, your vision, and your relentless pursuit of something greater than yourself. A company that doesn't just survive, it thrives. Not because you got lucky, not because you waited for someone to hand you a chance. You built it from nothing. You fought for every inch of it. You hired the same kind of people who once belittled you, the ones who thought you would never amount to anything. They're working for you now, and they know it. You don't have to remind them. They can see it in your eyes. They know who you've become. They know who and them they are now serving. And as you sit at the head of the table, it's not just the company you're leading. It's a vision, a purpose. You've built a legacy that will outlast you. You've created something that impacts lives, changes trajectories, shapes the future. You no longer ask for permission. You don't beg for a seat at anyone's table because you built your own. The weight of being a creator is heavier than people realize. It's not about the accolades or the rewards. It's about the responsibility. You're not just building a company. You're shaping a culture. You're guiding others to rise. You're leading them to greatness, and that is a heavy burden to bear. But it's also the greatest power there is. To know that the world you've built will continue to grow long after you're gone. That your decisions today will shape tomorrow. That you have the ability to impact people's lives in ways you once dreamed of, but never thought possible. You don't just run a company, you created it, you lead it, you shape it. And now everyone who once doubted you, everyone who once laughed, now sees the power you wield. They see the world you've built, and they wish they had been a part of it. But it's too late for that, because you don't just run the company, they dream of it in silence. They dream of the power you command, the success you've achieved. They wish they had the courage to build what you have, but they won't. They're still waiting for someone to hand them the keys. You've already created the world they only wish they could have. You don't just run a company, you are the company, and they'll never catch up. You don't just lead, you define what it means to lead. And that is power. Now that the power is yours, now that you've achieved everything they once told you was impossible, there's one final decision you must make. It's the one that defines true mastery. The decision to not retaliate. The decision to let go of the need to make them pay, to make them suffer for what they did to you. Revenge is loud, it's messy, it's the noise of the ego fighting to be seen, to be validated, to prove a point. But real power, real mastery, it's silent. It's the quiet strength of someone who has seen the pain, understood the scars, and realized that they don't need anyone's validation to know their worth. Revenge may burn brightly for a moment, but it's hollow. It doesn't change what happened. It doesn't heal the wound. It just keeps the cycle of suffering alive. You've learned that true power doesn't come from seeking retribution. It comes from detachment, the ability to rise above, to let go of the anger, the bitterness, and the need to make others feel the weight of their cruelty. When you release them, you aren't doing it for them. You're doing it for yourself. Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean excusing their actions. It doesn't mean you pretend they didn't hurt you. No, forgiving is about freeing yourself from the chains of resentment. It's about realizing that you no longer need to carry their mistakes, their cruelty, their disregard for your humanity. You let go, not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. Forgiveness isn't about them. It's about you. It's about the freedom that comes from releasing the weight of the past and making space for your future. When you forgive, you're not making them right. You're making yourself whole. You're taking back the power they once stole by allowing them to live rent-free in your mind. When you forgive, you stop giving them control over your happiness, your peace, your energy, and you take it all back. Now look at how far you've come. You've built a life they never saw coming. You've created a world of peace, of power, of purpose. And none of that was ever about revenge. It was never about showing them they were wrong. It was about showing yourself that you can rise above, that you can heal, that you can move on without the burden of hate. The hardest part isn't the forgiveness itself. It's the realization that you no longer need to hold on to what hurt you. That's when the real power comes. That's when the true freedom starts. You left them behind, not out of hate, but out of healing. You didn't walk away to prove something. You walked away because you had to. You left the anger, the pain, the resentment behind, not for them, but for your own peace. You chose to heal. You chose to rise. You chose to let go of the chains they tried to wrap around you. And when you did, you stepped into a version of yourself they could never touch. A version of yourself that was untouchable, free, and unburdened. Forgiveness isn't for them, it's for you. It's the final step to reclaiming your power. And when you take that step, you don't just leave them behind, you transcend them. Your success is a mirror. It's not just a reflection of your hard work, your sacrifice, or your perseverance. It's a reflection of all the paths they didn't take, the risks they didn't embrace, and the opportunities they let slip away. And now when they look at you, they don't just see success. They see a reminder of everything they could have been, a reminder of the person they might have become if they hadn't stayed stuck in their comfort zones, afraid to take the leap. You didn't rise to prove anything to them. You didn't rise to make them feel small. But their insecurities are now laid bare. Every step you take forward, every success you achieve, exposes the cracks in their own self-belief. They can't help but compare themselves to you. And the more they do, the more they realize they've been playing it safe. They've been hiding in their comfort zones, choosing familiarity over growth, and now they see you standing where they feared to go. It's not your fault. It's just the way the world works. When you rise, when you break free from the limitations others have placed on you, it makes those who've stayed behind uncomfortable. Because your success is a direct challenge to their complacency. It's a living, breathing reminder of the heights they could have reached if they weren't so scared to leave their safe little bubble. You see, while they stayed in the comfort of their predictable lives, you entered the crucible. You faced the fire, you walked through the struggle, the pain, the rejection, and you came out stronger on the other side. It wasn't easy, it wasn't pretty, but you did it. You chose growth over comfort. You chose action over stagnation. And now you stand in a place they can't even imagine. And here's the irony. Your growth, your rise, silently humbles the loudest critics. They've been shouting at you, telling you what you can't do, calling you weak, calling you crazy, calling you all the things that made you doubt yourself. But now, Now their voices are drowned out by your actions. You didn't have to say a word. You didn't need to scream from the rooftops about your success. Your success spoke for you. And the louder they criticized, the more their own inadequacies were exposed. But here's where the grace comes in. You didn't rise to outshine them. You didn't shine to make them feel inferior. You didn't rise to rub their faces in the fact that you've made it. No, you shined to guide others who are still in the dark. You rose so that those who feel lost, those who feel trapped in their own comfort zones, can see a way out. Your success is a beacon for those who are still afraid to take that first step. You didn't outshine them to shame them. You shined to guide others in darkness. Your success is not a weapon to use against them. It's a tool to help those who are still struggling, still doubting, still afraid. It's a light for those who are still walking in the shadows, just like you once were. You didn't rise to make them suffer. You rose to show them that anyone, even them, can step into the light if they're willing to let go of their fears. So let them watch. Let them be uncomfortable. Let them face their own insecurities. Because your success is their reflection. And while they may not be able to see it now, eventually they'll realize the only reason they couldn't achieve what you did was because they were too afraid to try. You didn't rise to outshine them. You rose to guide others to their own greatness. Reflecting on the journey, you can now see how far you've come. You started in the shadows, mocked, ignored, rejected. They laughed at your struggle, thinking it would break you, thinking it would define you. But now look at you, from mocked to mighty, from rejected to revered. You've done what they said you couldn't. You've become what they said you wouldn't. And all along, they never realized you were never broken. You were being forged. Your pain, the struggles, the times they tried to tear you down, those were never meant to imprison you. They were meant to fuel you. Your pain is not your prison. It's your platform. Every insult, every moment of loneliness, every ounce of doubt they cast upon you, those were the stepping stones to your greatness. They didn't break you. They only made you stronger. They didn't silence you. They gave you the power to roar louder. Through all the hardship, through all the moments where you could have given in, you found strength in the struggle. You found power in your silence. You found your purpose in your pain. And you stood, not as a victim of the world, but as someone who reshaped it. You turned every piece of hurt into something unshakable. You became the very thing they tried to erase. You became the leader they never thought you could be. They laughed. They mocked. They underestimated. But you didn't just survive. You led. They expected you to stay small. They expected you to stay quiet. They expected you to give up. But you proved them wrong. You proved that their words had no power over you. You proved that you were stronger than the weight they tried to place on you. You proved that no matter how many times they knocked you down, you would rise, and you would rise even stronger. And now here you are, standing tall, standing strong. Not out of spite, not out of revenge, but because you've embraced the fire within you. You've become the fire. Now you are the force they never saw coming. Now you are the storm they can't outrun. Now you are the fire they never knew would burn so brightly. Your rise is your truth. Your strength is undeniable. And as you stand, you realize your journey wasn't just about proving them wrong. It was about proving to yourself that you could overcome. It was about finding the courage to stand in the face of everything that tried to break you and saying, no, I will not fall, I will rise, and I will lead. Now you are the fire they never saw coming, and nothing can stop you now.